What's up, everybody? We're back at it again here in the Turbo Garage. The job now is to get this engine that's all been dressed and ready to go and punch it in that engine bay. We've got a few tasks to do before we can drop it in the engine bay. We got to put the whole flywheel and clutch assembly on, a couple other little tidbits, and from there it's off to the races. I'm not sure if I'm going to show you every gory detail of putting this thing back together because I showed you a lot of the disassembly. So I think things are going to move pretty fast from here on out. All right, folks, time's a-wasting. Let's get to work. Okay, let's rip out this old clutch master cylinder. Okay, I've already disconnected the little cotter pin inside the car, which was fun. So now we just unbolt these two nuts and they should come right out. Here we go. Okay, there's a little side-by-side. The old one is definitely dirty, and it looks like it's very possible that it was leaking from the bottom here. If you see all that residue down there, that's where they leak, you know, around the inside of that rubber seal. And the boot is kind of moist, so I would say this one was definitely in need of being replaced. All right, here's our bay over here. Got our tools sitting there. Here's the engine on the stand, all dressed and ready to go. You saw earlier that I got the engine bay nice and clean. That's all ready. We've installed the clutch master cylinder, as you've seen. And here's all the clutch components. We'll have to clean all those up. Transmission, all of our bolts and such. And now it's time to get this engine on the hoist. Let's do it. Okay, before we can throw on the flywheel and clutch assembly, it's really important to clean all these things. You know, they put a protective coating on here, usually some kind of oil, some kind of light oil, and it's just important to get all that off of there as well as any fingerprints or anything else. And Brake Clean does a great job at that. Okay, flywheel and clutch assembly is done. Let's punch it in there. All right, we've got the engine sitting on the front mount there, and the rear mount, we've got those bolts in, just hand tightened. I've got a little support underneath the oil pan, so now we can get this engine hoist out of here. Hey everybody, okay, it's a new day. I'm back at it in the garage. We're having a little break from this intense summer heat. It actually feels a little like fall out there this morning, so I'm gonna take advantage of this. I got a full day to get stuff done here in the garage. We've got the engine in, you saw that the other day, and now I'm gonna try just getting as much as I can done today. I'm gonna really fly. Okay, a quick update on how things are going. Could you get out of the torch? Get out of the, oh my goodness. So we have this whole side of the engine all together. All the accessories in place, alternator, power steering, air conditioning, all the belts tightened, all the little brackets and things in place. You see the power steering reservoir and that little line bracket, all that stuff is in place and torqued down. So this whole side of the engine is in good shape. Got our wastegate dump tube in place. While I was working down there on the alternator wiring, I did a little cleaning up of that, added some new high temp loom and in places where the old factory tape was sort of unraveling from years of having oil and junk all over it. So, you know, whenever you're doing a job like this, there's no need to rush. It's like you just address all of those little problems and issues and while you're in there. So now, I think we're at a good point to slide that transmission in. As you can see, I've already installed the release fork and throwout bearing. All that's in place, ready to go. All right, let's chuck it in there. All right, axles are in and just snugged up for now. I need to come back and torque everything later, but now I'm gonna throw in the gussets and the cross brace and the transfer case, and we'll keep on rolling. All right, this is where I'm gonna end up today. I'm out of time, I'm afraid. Transmission in, shifter cables, lots of connections plugged in, like the starter and such, and just a lot of progress today. Real happy with how today went. Sad that I ran out of time, but I guess I'll talk to you next time I'm in here. Okay folks, it is a new day here in the garage. I'm back at it. I have ditched the coveralls in favor of a short sleeve and some shorts. I'm just dying in the heat out here, so I gotta stay cool. There's a lot to do. Made good progress last time, but now there's lots of little things, so I'm just gonna kind of fly and I'll update you as I go. Okay, a lot of you have been commenting that it always rains here when I'm working in the garage, and I just want to dispel that rumor once and for all. Here we go. Never mind, it's raining again. All right, you've seen me change the clutch master cylinder. Here's the other part of that equation, the clutch slave cylinder. The old one that's on the car, I'm not sure how many miles it has on it. It doesn't necessarily look like it's leaking or anything, but this is just more peace of mind. So I've got the old one hand tightened in place so I can break this line here loose. Once that's done, I can put the new one in place, and then we'll bleed all that whole system later on. Actually, instead of breaking this tiny little line loose, I'm just going to take it off at this fitting here, this banjo fitting. Okay, we got the front end all together. The struts are torqued down. The center nut there is torqued to 188 foot-pounds. We got the splash guards in. Now I'm gonna throw the downpipe in. Okay, now it's time to fill up the transmission and transfer case. For the transmission, I have this Mitsubishi Dia-Queen here. Pretty good stuff. Pretty much made from unicorn tears, I believe. And then for the transfer case, this is what Jack's transmission recommends for DSM transfer cases, this lightweight shockproof. So first I'm going to fill up the transfer case, and Jack's has very specific instructions for doing so. Which I've heard these before and used this technique. It's where you fill it up through the drain hole. And they have this information on their website if you'd like to read more about it. The next job on the list is one that I found when I was removing the engine. Overall, the wiring harness is in excellent condition on this car, and that is something that can really go haywire in these cars. You know, there's a lot of heat under the hood, and if the connectors have been removed and replaced over the years, they can really get brittle and the wires damaged and things like that, and it can cause all sorts of drivability issues. Now, in this case, the wiring harness, like I said, very good, but where it goes around the cylinder head, you can see right here, this whole section where it goes around the coolant neck and around the cylinder head, a lot of heat right there, and this is all really brittle, and some of the wiring is cracked. You can see here the wire is broke off on the end. On this little connector here, you can see it's broken off right there. Just overall very brittle. So I'm just going to go through this entire harness. There's the oxygen sensor. I'm going to go through this whole harness, make sure everything's cool. I'll remove this loom that's gotten so tough and brittle over the years, and just replace whatever we need and make sure everything's working great. So what I'm doing here is just slowly and carefully with my snips here and other tools, cutting this brittle old loom off of here. And what I've already found is a couple wires broken in places and damaged in other little ways, and I'll just go ahead and replace all that. Here's all of the cracked and brittle wiring stuff that we pulled out of that area. What happens is it runs right underneath the water neck, so it's lots of heat, and then the cam angle sensor is there, and the oil, valve cover. So you get lots of oil leaks and stuff, and the oil gets down all over those wires, and you can see this is supposed to be soft and pliable, but it's just all brittle and junky. Once we pulled off the loom, we had a variety of things like this. Wires that were so brittle that they were breaking or completely broken off. But we got it all taken care of now. Things are coming along nicely here. You can see we got the wiring all cleaned up around that water neck, all those sensors, got a variety of new plugs and wires in there. Got that all good as new. Radiator is in. Oil line, now that we have an oil feed line running down through there, just had to come up with a solution to keep it away from the hot dump pipe and keep it from contacting the radiator surface here. So just used a couple of these cushion clamps. The one on this side, put a little standoff under it to raise it up a little, and just so it's not binding on that line at all. I think we've got a good solution there. I'll check it after, you know, the first few miles, make sure everything's cool. Introducing Tom, playing the song of his people on the upper intercooler pipe. The ball of light, it has returned. Welcome to Rain Town, where it never stops freaking raining. Go down there. There we go. All right, now if you're really old-fashioned and old school, you'll know exactly why I have this Fram G3 fuel filter. If not, I'll tell you about it. So back in the day, before like catch cans were really a thing, we're talking like a long time ago, what you could do was put one of these inline filters from your valve cover hose that goes into your air intake, and you would put it in line like this, and it would act like a very rudimentary catch can. You can see how there's some oil and stuff in there. So this would catch oil and oil vapor that would typically go from your valve cover and then be sucked into the inlet of your turbo, and then filter it down a bit and weed out some of that stuff. But obviously not nearly as effective as a good catch can. I'm just going to do this temporarily during our first start and a few miles. I've got something way better coming, and I'll show you that in the coming days. Okay, it's the moment of truth. I think I got everything. I've double and triple checked everything I can think of. So now I'm gonna crank it over to build pressure and just check everything, check for fuel leaks and things like that. Then I'll connect the ignition and then we'll try to fire it up. Okay folks, first thing we're gonna do is just crank it over to build up the oil pressure, and then we'll go out and make sure everything looks good, there's no fuel leaks or anything. All right, here we go. Okay, everything sounds all right. I'm gonna go take a look. Okay, before I fire it up, I'm just gonna check everything. Since we cranked it over, I'll check for fuel leaks mainly, make sure that's all good, and just kind of eyeball everything before we fire it up. Okay, MPI fuse going back in. There we go, that. Okay, MPI fuse is back in. We're ready to fire it up. Okay, it's running. So good. That all went really smooth. I couldn't really be happier with it. I looked all around. There's no leaks or anything. So nothing out of the ordinary here, which is great. Okay, folks. Well, that all went pretty great. No surprises, thankfully. I looked everything over. No leaks. You can hear it's running really smooth. Rev happy, which is how that old Talon engine was. And I think it's going to be the same way in the Galant. And just can't wait to take it out on the road. Got a couple things to do. Got to bleed the clutch, get the hood on. Still have to set the timing. After that, we can get it out on the road, see how it does, data log it, break in the clutch, all that stuff. Can't wait for all that. Thanks for coming along on this journey with me. It's been lots of fun. There's still plenty to do. And with that said, thanks again, folks. We'll see you next time.